afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the ISO, I'd like to welcome you to today's stakeholder call. My name is Christina Guimera, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs. Just a reminder that today's call is being recorded for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcriptions should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. Please remember to keep comments professional and respectful. To ask questions during the meeting, you can open the participant and chat panels on the bottom right, and you can then raise your hand by selecting the raise hand icon, or if you joined audio only, please press *3 on your device. And please remember to state your name and affiliation first before making a comment. And you can also send comments and questions via chat to all panelists or directly to myself. And if you run into any technical issues today, please contact Inteller Events, the host.
Next slide, please. And I should say I'm planning to go through the slides. There's not a lot of them. Explain the process again, and hopefully at the end we'll pause, open it up for questions. We spend the rest of the time, answering questions that you may have. So again, what's the background? Why are we here today? Some of you might know, or maybe your policy teammates are aware of this. The CAISO is going through a resource adequacy modeling and program design policy initiative. In that policy initiative, we're looking into reassessing some of the challenges that we have today in the CAISO RA process, and tackling some of these challenges and providing solutions. That process, or that policy initiative, is going through 3 tracks. The focus today, or what this request came from, is track 3A specifically, which is looking into the getting the CAISO more insight into the resource visibility. The resources that are within our balancing authority area, the CAISO today is only aware of their resource adequacy megawatts. The CAISO is not aware or don't have access or visibility into the remaining contractual status of our internal fleet. So that's what we're trying to achieve with that policy initiative. We provided a draft proposal. Got very good feedback from you guys, a lot of supportive feedback, and during the call as well, so really appreciate it. And it we explained thoroughly in the working groups, our working groups, and in the policy initiative. I think we talked a lot about why we need this data and what we're looking for. So I would, if you weren't aware of part of these discussions, you can look at the slides and the videos there that we talked about extensively. But that policy initiative is basically going to take its own process and its own time. It's going to go through the remainder of the year, and then we're going to go through approval and then implementation. We're hoping to get implementation by next summer. We're looking at CIRA as the appropriate platform to collect this data. We're going to try to make it as least burdensome as possible for you guys and for us. So we'll do as much automation as possible, minimize the ask as much as we can that would still achieve the visibility that we're looking into. So that topic of that discussion is going through the policy initiative, and we'll talk about implementation as usual in the normal kind of process that we follow. But for this summer, we wanted to get insight and to get visibility as an interim measure for this summer, for summer 2025, which we're talking about the months of June all the way to September. So we want to do a targeted request for data from you guys, from the scheduling coordinators for generators. And I'm going to mention this again, but just to clarify, because we got some questions. Are we asking this data from LSCs? Who is supposed to submit this data? This data we're asking for the scheduling coordinators who are acting on behalf of the generators, or more commonly known as the suppliers. So the data is specifically for our internal fleet, the fleet that usually goes on the AQC list or is already on the AQC list. That's what we're talking about, the internal generation. And that's the data we're trying to look into and get more visibility for. Again, the people who submit this are the suppliers. Granted, we've seen also some questions. Some of our load serving entities also own generation, and they are the scheduling coordinators for their generation fleet or generating fleet, then there's a request for them as well to submit the data that we're asking for here. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the request? And again, we sent the market notice that talks about it on June 4th, so you can look at that afterwards if you like. But the request is the California ISO. We're requesting the scheduling coordinators for generating resources that are inside our balancing authority area to provide us contractual data for their resources. The full contractual data that makes up their entire NQC value. In the policy discussion, we called it RA eligible, and that's what we meant by RA eligible. To clarify, again, we got some questions about that. RA eligible meaning the NQC, so whatever your NQC amount is for your resource, we would like to see the breakdown of that resource megawatts based on the categories that I'm going to talk about next. So that's the ask. Again, because we're doing it for the whole summer, when we do implementation next year, we're thinking of doing it as a monthly recurring kind of process, a submittal process that's aligned with the supply plan submission. Maybe we even put it as part of the supply plan. We'll discuss design with you guys, and obviously if you guys have suggestions on how would we design that implementation, please let us know. Again, the goal is to make it as least burdensome as possible for you guys. But that's what we're going to do, full implementation. For this summer, it's just a one-time request for the entire summer. And that's why we're saying here, if the resource is on the NQC list, or if you anticipate it to be on the NQC list by the beginning of September, therefore you'll show it or use it as RA for the month of September, then give us the data as well for that resource. And again, it's going to be based on your estimation. If it's not on the NQC list, then you can estimate the NQC value based on the tech factors. We have a process, probably most of you SCs are aware of how to submit an NQC request and how to estimate your value based on your nameplate PMAX. But obviously, if you need help, we can help you with that. So the data is going to be one-time submission for June through September of 2025. To the best of your knowledge, at the time of submission, we are aware that things can change throughout the summer. That's fine. Give us the status at the time of submission. That's what we're looking for. And like I said, we sent out the market notice 2 weeks ago on June 4th, and we're hoping to get the data by next Wednesday, a week from today, on June 25th. Next slide, please. All right, these are the three categories that we talked about. We talked about them in the policy initiative, but I think what we tried to do for this summer, again, in our attempt to minimize the burden on you guys, because it's this is going to be a manual submission through City. So we're trying to minimize the burden as much as possible. In doing so, we created the template and we posted it. We consolidated the categories from 5 in the policy initiative. So when we go full implementation next year, we're looking at 5 categories. For this summer, we consolidated them into 3 categories to try to, again, help you guys out, minimize the burden, and the fact that we're trying to do multiple months in the future. Some of the categories that we talked in the policy initiative you might not have visibility into or awareness at this point. So this consolidation hopefully will help out, simplify the process, and make it easier to understand as well. And again, one-time submission also is to kind of minimize the burden. So what are the 3 categories? Category number 1 is the megawatts that are contracted to a CAISO BAA LSC, which means an LSC that if you sold RA capacity as a supplier to an LSC that's within the CAISO balancing authority area, these are the LSCs that you typically sell RA to, and you show them on your supply plan. These are the LSCs that we're talking about. They are within the CAISO BAA. Therefore, their load is within the CAISO BAA. And what this category gives us insight to is it tells us that these megawatts are going to be serving the CAISO load, because these LSCs are within our BAA, balancing authority area, and we're the BA, we're the balancing authority. That tells us that, okay, this capacity is contracted to serve our load. So that's one category. And again, just for the month of June to September for this summer, because it's a one-time submission. And you know, on a monthly breakdown, and I'm gonna show you an example of a template, or if you can go into daily, you know, breakdown, that's fine too. It depends on the contractual status. The second type is sold outside the ISO BAA. So sold outside the ISO BAA, that means you contracted to someone who's not within the CAISO BAA, an LSC or any entity that's not inside the CAISO BAA. Basically anyone other than the ones in category 1. Category 1 is the LSCs that are in BAA. If you sold it to someone else, that means they're external to our BAA, and therefore we can, you know, that tells us that this capacity is not going to be available to serve our load, and it's going to be exported outside of our system. And then the final category is basically everything else. If you don't have a contract for the remaining amount, then put that there in that category. That means you don't have a contract, you don't have that part of your resource is not committed to anyone, and it's available for people to put under contract. And then I think one thing people asked about, again, what are the LSCs? These are the LSCs that are within our BAA, and then they are you know, that you usually show them on the supply plans and sell RA too. And I see a quick question from on the chat. To clarify this, the question is to clarify, does this only apply to in-state resources on the CAISO published NQC list, i.e. not specified imports that have a TPUC published QC only? That's correct, yes. So great question. We got a few of those that, hey, do we put imports on the list? No, we're not asking for imports. Granted, if you want to put the imports there, that's fine. We're not, you know, we have ways to filter the data and distinguish between imports and internal generation, but we're not asking you to submit that data. We're focused on the resources that are within our BAA. So resource-specific imports, non-resource specific imports, all of these are not on the CAISO NQC list. Yes, the resource-specific imports do show up on the CPUC's QC list, but we're not requesting data for those, and those are not on the CAISO NQC list. So everything on the CAISO NQC list is exclusively internal generation that's within the CAISO BAA, and that's a good way for you to know if this is within the BAA and if it's RA eligible. So that's hopefully that clarifies. Next slide, please. Oh, and then this is a map of our BAA, Balancing Authority area. Again, you know, because we got a few of those questions, so I'm kind of focusing on it. This is what we mean. If you're inside this Balancing Authority area, the CAISO Balancing Authority area, these are the type of resources we're asking for contractual status for. They're NQC eligible, and they show up on the NQC list. That's the type of resources. In master file, if you guys you want to go technical, they're under the resource type. They're considered GEN, G-E-N. That's the resource type in master file. So if that's your resource type in master file, then you're internal to the CAISO BAA. So that's what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to find out how much of that capacity is sold or committed to the CAISO BAA load versus how much of it is an external load, and how much of it is not under any it's not under any contract. And I wanted to say something about the LSCs. I forgot. I'll get to that. I'll get to that later. Okay, next slide, please. Yes. Okay. Now hopefully you understand what does the data look like. How do you submit the data? So we in the market notice, we clarified that please submit the data in a city ticket. and make sure the subject line is exactly 2025 summer visibility day request. It's in bold on this slide. The reason is it helps us kind of process your ticket easier. We have some automation to kind of move the tickets in the right direction when they have this title. So if you can please make sure the title of the ticket is just this in the title. You can put whatever you want in the description, but the title of the ticket, keep it to that, 2025 summer visibility day request. And then in the ticket, please attach the template. So download the template from our website. If you go under KISO.com, under Generation and Transmission tab, and then under Resource Adequacy section, you'll see first in the template section, the first one is this new template that we added. It's called KISO Resource Visibility Template. Download the template, please, fill it up, and then attach it to the ticket, and that's your submission essentially. That's how you're doing your submission. And again, please do it by June 25th. If you need more time, if you need questions, things are not clear, or you need a little bit more time to collect the data, please let us know. We will try to be as accommodating as possible. Again, our goal is to get visibility into the data, improve some reliability, but at the same time, we minimize the burden on you guys. So we will work with you in every way possible to help you out submit the data successfully. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is an example. So again, the template will have 3 tabs. The first tab talks about the instructions that I talked about. So feel free to go through these instructions. But I think I got into even more details today. So hopefully you guys are well equipped right now. The second tab is your admin tab. It's essentially the same tab as the one in the supply plan. So fill it up, please, so we know who submitted this and how to contact you if we have questions. And then the main tab, the capacity tab, that's what we're looking for, the data and the breakdown of the resources. So basically, all the resources that you're the scheduling coordinator for that are on the NQC list, or you're planning to add a NQC list through the summer, please list them there. That's how we're going to validate that you fulfilled the submission completely. We're going to check, is all the resources on the NQC list? Do we get all the data for them? So make sure you do that, please. If you're not sure if the resource is going to go in the summer or not, then just give us the resources that are on the NQC list. That's fine. And so what you do is first you put in the first column, you put in the resource ID. This is a fake one that I put there. And then the next column is the capacity contracted to a KISO LSC. Oh, and that's okay, I remember now. We got a couple questions from LSCs that own resources. And they were saying, okay, what if I own the resource? It's not under contract. I own it though, and I'm going to show it as RA to serve my RLA obligation, to serve my load. Then that falls under this column as well. So it's capacity that's contracted to a KISO LSC or owned by a KISO LSC, and the LSC is intending to use it for its load, to serve its obligation, to use the generation for its own load. If you're not going to use this generator, you own it, but you're not going to use it for yourself, or you're partially going to use it, and partially you're going to leave it you're planning to open it up for people to buy. You're willing to contract it to other LSCs or even external entities, then put that under not contracted, please. So that tells us there's distinction that, okay, this is not committed to the KISO load, versus the first column is saying, hey, this is committed to the KISO load, it's under contract, or is owned by an LSC, KISO and LSC, and it's going to serve its load. So hopefully that explains that distinction, because we got, again, a couple of questions about that category. It's not relevant for purely supplier kind of entities. That's not for them, but for entities that are LSCs and suppliers, we have a lot of those. This might be relevant to you. And then the second one is like I said, this is the contract capacity that you sold to an entity outside the KISO BAA. And then the third category is just not under contract, not committed to anything basically. And then, so put that in megawatts. Again, please in 2 decimals max. And put in the start and end date. The start and end dates could be like in the first example, if the breakdown for your resource, you're lucky, it's a simple one where you have 50, this is a 100 megawatt NQC resource that I put in both examples. Resource number one has 100 megawatt NQC. You are lucky that 50 of it is contracted to CAISO LSC for the entire summer, June 1st to September 30th. And it's 20 is going external, 30 is not contracted. You have the same breakdown across the summer, then that's it. Then put, June 1st to September 30th. Pretty straightforward. But in the second example with the resource two, this is where the resource might have different breakdown across the month, or even across, if you have it across the days, a breakdown, then you can do that. The template is open, start date, end date, as you see fit. The key thing we're looking for, and we're going to validate, is for every day from June 1st to September 30th, we want to make sure that each resource is NQC is fully allocated. That's what we're looking for. Make sure you allocate your NQC fully for each resource for all of those summer months from June to September. So hopefully this example helps out. As you can see, the breakdown could be different, and that's fine. We broke it down by month, but it could be broken down with even more, granular level if that applies to you. All right, I think that's the last one. Can you go next slide, please? I think we're perfect. All right, let me pause now. Sorry, I talked quite a bit, but I felt like it's better to explain the process fully, because in explaining it, I answered a lot of the frequently asked questions. And then now I'll pause, and the rest of the time is yours. Please ask all the questions you like. And back to you, Christina, for questions.
Thanks, Abdul. So first, we have a hand raised from Perry Servedio. Go ahead, Perry.
Hey, this is Perry Servedio, California Energy Storage Alliance. I had a few questions. If you could go back to the slide where you're outlining the different categories. There's 3 categories. There wasn't a slide number, otherwise I would have captured that, I think.
That would have been slide 6, I think, or no, sorry, slide 7. Ryan, I think it's slide 7.
Chris, oh, okay.
Ryan, could you go to, there we go.
There you go.
Got it. Okay, so then you mentioned that we had talked about 5 categories, but you guys have determined these 3 for this summer. Can you remind me what the other 2 categories were?
Sure, yeah. The other 2 were held for RA substitution and not expected to be available due to availability limitations.
I see. Okay, so if I do have a contract that gives, and let's say I'm on the supply side, I have a contract that gives the LSE an option to use capacity as substitution IM, would you guys consider that substitution option as contracted to the LSE? I mean, that would be, I'd put it under this first bucket.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, that's helpful. And then just broader question, I guess I should have asked this one first. Can you remind me what is CAISO going to do with this information that it receives?
Yeah, and we talked about that in the policy quite a bit, but I think a few things that we're trying to do, at least for the summer, that will give us better outlook into the summer reliability, what we expect that's going to be RA, that's going to serve our load, and how much of the fleet is actually getting exported. So that's going to give us insight into that. It's also going to give us insight into, is there capacity not contracted? We've heard, and then again, this is kind of policy side of things, so I might defer to Hillary, but we've heard people like, hey, there's tightness in the RA capacity. So I think this will give us good insight on what's going on, especially in the summer when the capacity is most needed, and that will help us shape our future policy as well. You know, part of the reason, even though the request is almost the end of June, we're still asking for June data. Part of that is to say, okay, this is the full summer list of data, and now as we're developing policy, you know, in the other tracks and other future working groups, this breakdown of what's the contractual status, what's going on to our fleet, the CAISO fleet, what's happening there, that hopefully will give us good insight into determining how we drive the future policy and enhance our RA process more. And obviously, Hillary, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
I think you summarized it well.
You know, it seems that you guys made a determination that these 3 categories are sufficient for this summer. Is there any chance that that thinking sticks, that you actually don't need the other 2 categories? Because honestly, I think these 3 categories align more with where our thinking was when you guys were talking about this in the initiative, where you don't need, there's another level of detail that I'm not sure is useful, as to the extent that this feeds into CPM decision making or whatnot. I could see it being helpful there as well, but I think these 3 categories pretty much gives you everything you need to know.
Yeah, and again, I think we talked about this in the policy discussion quite a bit, and I think we talked about why a further breakdown of withheld for substitution or not available would help us in the CPM decisions process. So I think we can discuss this again, but I would you know, urge you to bring this up in the policy discussion because today we have just 1 hour, and I want to help out everyone who's submitting data, get their answers done, and they can provide the information, if that's okay with you, Terry.
Yeah, no, okay. So I can stay away from those questions. I did have, I think, 2 more questions. One is there an active PRR for this to get this requirement added to the BPM? And if so, what is that number, that PRR number?
Absolutely, yeah. We will not have a PRR for this one-time submission. We will have a PRR with the policy. When the policy is approved with the tariff filing, we'll have a PRR aligned with that, and we'll share it out when we get there.
Okay, then the last question is just then, is this an optional submittal at this point if it's not in the tariff, or is there, since I see David's here, or is there some tariff authority that applies here to make this not optional?
We're requiring this. I'll let David answer, but we are requiring the data. David,
Terry,
please.
The tariff language, it's the same section. I forgot the exact section. It's been referenced multiple times in the policy papers dealing with reference to capacity status, and the ISO has the right to ask about that. So yeah, that's been covered there.
I can go look at those documents then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the idea with policy processes, then we'll kind of build out a more, more detail about what the requests are and so on. But yeah, that's answering that question.
Sure. Oh yeah, thanks for that. I could go dig it up from those documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Next, we have a question in the chat from Ephraim Sandoval asking, if you plan on using a resource for yourself and have sold some, for the rest, do you list it in one line, or do you break it up into purchases and for your own uses?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question, my friend. Thank you. If the resource using, you're an LSC as well, so if you're using it for yourself, then you're going to show this as a contract to the CAISO LSC. The amount that you sold to someone else, if that someone else is another CAISO LSC, a CAISO BAA LSC, then you can aggregate it. You can put all of it under the same column, the same megawatts, aggregate it as a CAISO LSC. If that other entity you sold to is outside the CAISO BAA, then put it separately under the CAISO BAA column. So we're not looking for a breakdown by LSC. We're just looking for aggregation based on type. Is the Is the LSC inside our BAA or is it outside our BAA?
Thank you. Next, we have a hand raised from Mike Wootton at Vistra.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, quick question. You had mentioned earlier, and I apologize if I missed this, that you were originally pondering 5 categories. If you fell into one of the 2 categories that got dropped, your generator that's holding for sub or your generator that's unavailable, where would you put those? If you're still on the if you are on the NQC list, but you fall into those 2 categories that are not on this, where would you recommend we log those megawatts?
Absolutely, yes. Thanks, Mike. That's a great question. So it's going to be dependent on the contract. So one of the categories was expected not to be available. If that amount that you expected not to be available, if it's under contract, then put it under the correct contract column. Column 1 if it's a CAISO LSC, or column 2 if it's an external LSC. If that amount that you expected to be unavailable, you did not contract it as RA or a contract to a CAISO LSC or an external entity, then you can put it under the not contracted. That's where you break it down. The other category, which is withheld for substitution. Withheld for substitution, you're gonna use it to substitute for another, if you sold it to an LSC, in Perry's example, and the LSC is going to use it for substitution, you don't know that, obviously, you just sold it to the LSC, so then you put it under the first column. If you are withholding it for your own substitution, then you can put it under not contracted, if you don't have a contract again. But if your contractual process where even for your own substitution, somehow you're keeping it, keeping under contract, it's not available for folks to use it, then put it under an LSC because it's substituting RA capacity that is serving that load, right? So if that substitution amount is blocked from anyone else to use for contracting, if you finalized it and you're like, okay, that substitution megawatt, I'm not going to sell it to anyone, internal or external, it will be used for substitution, that means it will be RA, and therefore it's going to be under column A. If it's not blocked, you want to use it for substitution, but you have it available. If someone buys it, you'll just move your outage or cancel your outage, then put it under not contracted. Does that help? That one is the more complicated one. That's why we removed it. Does it help the description, Mike?
It does. I might have some follow-on questions, but I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time, and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat either.
Awesome. Well, I think that's my section, so really appreciate. Hopefully we answered most of the questions. Again, if you have any further questions, feel free to send us a ticket or contact your client rep, or email me directly. My email is in the market notice that we sent again on June 4th. So feel free to email me with questions. Really appreciate it, guys, and appreciate David and Hillary, your support on this, and Christina. So back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Abdul. And now I just have a few announcements today before we wrap up. Here you can see some of the meetings taking place at the ISO this week. And here you can see market simulations occurring this week. And lastly, for insights into the ISO grid and market operations, be on the lookout for our Energy Matters blog. Here you can see some of our latest blog posts, including one regarding strengthening reliability through year-round gas-electric coordination. So with that, we'd like to thank you so much for joining today's discussion. As a reminder, this meeting was recorded for informational and convenience purposes only. All meeting materials are available online, and the video file will be posted soon. We thank you very much, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
That concludes our conference. You may now disconnect.